Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required. Subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
No risk it, no biscuit.
Arizona Cardinals fans, do you see red? Are you part of the Red Sea? Then you are listening to the show for you. A podcast for Cardinals fans, by Cardinals fans, with outsider and insider perspectives. It's time to rise up and see red. Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. We're in episode 171. I'm your host, Jess Root. Seth Cox from my co-host is on the line. He's from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's NFL site covering the Arizona Cardinals, and the host of the NFL Draft Breakdown podcast. I write, and I'm the site editor for CardsWire.com, the USA Today NFL Wire site for the Arizona Cardinals. And Seth, it is, we're as positive we were a week ago. We're kind of back where we were, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think we saw this coming. I mean, we wanted to stay positive, but deep down in our hearts, we were always concerned that this was a week-to-week thing.
And this is exactly what happened. The Cardinals. So we're going to talk about that game that the Cardinals were shut out 33-0 by the Los Angeles Rams. Fall to 3-4 in the season. Embarrassed themselves in London. Adrian Peterson can't get anything going. And the game wasn't. They did nothing offensively. They did nothing defensively, and they messed up on special teams. And broken arm, done for. Well, going to be out. At least a month minimum. That's the bare minimum. Might be as much as the rest of the year. So. Yeah, we kind of have a lot to talk about, and none of it's really great. So, thanks for listening, and join us as we go through this episode of, as the Cardinals are on their bye week, we're going to kind of go through some of this unpleasant things and talk about things moving forward, because there's definitely a lot to talk about. We got Carson Palmer's injury and Drew Stanton taking over. So we're going to talk about that. Bruce Arians and some retirement rumor that came out on Tuesday. We're going to look back at the loss to the Rams and some of the comments that Bruce Arians said. And then at the very end, we'll kind of look at, since we're basically at the midpoint of the season, the Cards had to bye this week, we're going to, basically assess each position group and give some outlook looking forward before we call this show a wrap. So let's go ahead and get started, talk about Carson Palmer. And, well, first of all, we sort of predicted it. We knew that he would not be able to sustain the hits that he had been taking all year. It was eventually going to get him hurt. And it's right. So Palmer's out, breaks his arm. Alec Ogletree hits him on a play when he's throwing down the field, and the throw gets picked off. He comes out with an arm injury. Because the Cardinals have had really bad luck with really, really bad fortune with wrists and arms, I tweeted, knowing what the Cardinals have gone through this year, it's probably a fracture. Right after the game, what do we find out? Broken arm, 8 weeks. And it looks like, well, that's the initial prognosis, 8 weeks. If he has to go on injured reserve, and even if we come back, we're looking at a minimum. He's only going to get a couple of games back in this year. He says 4 to 6 weeks, maybe he's getting a second opinion. Nothing's really changed on the roster other than they signed Mike Bercovici to the practice squad for all you Sun Devil fans. So, Seth, what was your initial reaction to the play itself, the injury? What did you think? How bad did you anticipate it? Was this what you figured would end up happening?
I mean, it was a little more dramatic than I think even we could have expected, but I guess we're at the point where now we can declare that the Rams are a better team than the Cardinals. I think that's safe, wouldn't you say?
And they have, they've definitely put their mark on the division where they have sent a message to the Cardinals to say, we're here
and
we're not going anywhere.
Right. So when you look at it, I think you and I, we were kind of in that, all right, do I buy the Rams? Are the Cardinals really not good? Because, when you look at the Cardinals' victories, they're over the team that's picking second in the draft right now, fourth in the draft, and sixth in the draft. So it's not like they've beaten anybody that's any good, actually. And they've had one of the easiest schedules in the NFL so far. So when you couple those things, you go, okay, well, maybe they're not good, but I can't buy the Rams. So we'll see what happens. And then this happens. And so now you're like, all right, well, at least we know where the Cardinals stand. At least there's no more wondering. At least to me, it's pretty evident of what this team is. And now without their quarterback, I don't know, maybe it miraculously spurs a change in philosophy, but that's not, really Bruce Arians' style. He's not going to change who he is. He never really has. So I don't really see this. He definitely outside of 14, he definitely is much more conservative with Drew Stanton at quarterback. And even in 14, he was more conservative with Drew Stanton in quarterback. So, we know that he's going to try to lean on the run game a little bit more. The question really just becomes, what does this team have left? Do they have, are they embarrassed about what happened in London? Are they going to regroup, or, are they done? And so all of those questions, I don't know if you can answer them against San Francisco in a positive way, but I definitely think we can get an answer in the opposite direction if they, come out of their bye and lose to San Francisco. So
for me, the question is, do you think that Carson is done? That was my initial thing. I wrote after the game when he said 8 weeks, that you're looking at perhaps Carson Palmer's season is over, and if the season is over, is his career over? That's a real possibility with the news that on Monday that, Palmer was thinking more 4 to 6 weeks. He's had a broken something before. I don't know when he's had a broken arm before, but apparently he did.
But this would be his what?
And he was back in 5.
Fourth or fifth surgery, just like in season surgery, right? Like he had the knee in Cincy, and then he had the elbow.
He had elbow. Did he have shoulder too?
That's why I can't remember if he had that in season or out of season. But yeah, this will be his 5th surgery of his career. And at some point, we hear about brain and brain injuries, and that is a thing. Like I'm not belittling that at all, but these guys take other beatings and things like that. I always remember the story of Andre Wadsworth, epic bust in Cardinals lore. And the reality is that guy can barely walk, and he's not even 50 yet. He's had like 7 knee surgeries. These guys take a beating in their career. And so, we saw it with Kurt Warner, and now hindsight, obviously we weren't joking, but we joked about, he's going to get Warnered. And I think he has.
Although, because as of right now, the Cardinals are intending it. He will finish the season somehow. If he goes on IR, they're going to bring him back, which means like 2 games left. Which I think kind of the hope is that they can somehow tread water at right around 500.
Be at 7-7 and then win those last 2 games with Palmer
with Palmer and David Johnson back, that maybe they can squeak into the playoffs. Or in a best case scenario, he might not even have to go on injured reserve. They just carry him on the roster for the month and a half that it takes. So we don't really know how long that's the kind of thing we're kind of up in the air. I'm going to predict that 4 or 5 weeks is way too early. But if we're looking at, I think probably December, like the last 3 games, I think we can anticipate. It might not be just the last 2 games, so it'll be a little bit faster. But the last 3 games, we'll be able to play in, and you know, assuming his arm is healthy, bone wise, that actually, think about it, wouldn't that be kind of good for his old man arm to come back in with 3 games left?
Well, but here's the other question: if you're Palmer, and this is where it gets muddy, and you kind of just wish they would put him on IR so there was never a question. But if they're, let's say, 4-10, and he, you know, let's say 4-9, and he's able to come back the last 3 games. If you're Carson Palmer, why? It's completely different if they're, you know, if they go on a 6-game win streak and they're 9-4. But if they're sitting at 4-9, and you're Carson Palmer, why are you coming back for those last 3 games? What's the point outside of you want to end your career or, you know, the year on a positive note? But I mean, you're probably still coming into the same offensive line issues if they're 4-9. You're still coming into the same defense issues where you're going to be asked to throw the ball 77 times a game. So why even do it? And then that causes the next issue, which would be then we start to hear or have the conversation about, oh, is he, you know, dedicated, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, that's not fair to the dude. Like, he's coming off an injury and he's, you know, coming back to a team that's going to have a losing record. Having a better losing record is, you know, a good reason to bring him back. Like, if he's for it, then that's one thing. But if he's like, nah, you know, I just want to take the year and heal, then all of a sudden you've got this like weird dichotomy going on in the organization and the roster of, you know, why didn't you come back? Why didn't you? And it's like, man, just put him on the IR so we don't have to worry about any of this. Like, let's just turn the page, get to Drew Stanton for 2 or 3 weeks, and then go to Blaine Gabbert for the rest of the year. Like, let's just turn the page from Carson Palmer at this point, because it's not fair to Palmer to put that expectation on him, at least in my opinion, that he needs to be back.
And for me, it comes down to, well, as far as we know, based on everything he said, he wanted to play football this year. So he always wanted to come back and was just waiting for his body to recover. And maybe it'd take a little longer because there was a little bit of drama. After this season, I wonder if that's going to be the same thing. I could see him coming back next year. That, to me, that was never all year. I've always felt that, you know, he's probably coming back this year. The way the offensive line played early on, the just the punishment he was taking made me think that a little bit differently. But with a broken arm, I wonder if the family's going to step in and say, "You really sure?" But he's gonna find it hard to walk away from the game. He loves football that much. He's that much of a gamer. He loves the game of football, and he loves the competition. If it's really all about his physical ability to recover, I mean, if he recovers, I could see him back. So I don't know if he's done, and it does put the Cardinals in an interesting situation where Cardinals fans are looking for, you know, if Palmer's not going to be, let's just tank. And the team doesn't want to do that. They've got too much talent on the team to just be awful. So they still have to try to win games, and they got players who want to win games. Which leads us to the next question. Drew Stanton or Blaine Gabbert? This is I mean, Bruce Arians was very clear. We're going to start Drew Stanton. He's our number 2. Why would we just skip number 2 to go to number 3? That's not how football works. Drew Stanton's going to start. Fans really want to see Blaine Gabbert. What's your take on this? I wrote about it, and it agrees with one of our local radio guys. What's your take on the Stanton Gabbert?
You know, I'm one of those people that I don't say the team should lose. I would never say you should bench your best players or things of that nature. What I will say is that I've seen enough of Drew Stanton to know that he's a really watered down version of Carson Palmer, in the sense that he's definitely not going to win you any games, but he can do enough to keep you in a game and allow defense, special teams, your running game, et cetera, to win you a game. So when you look at it from that vantage point, I understand why they're going with Stanton. He's the known commodity. It's the less risky play at this juncture. But for me, I don't need to see Drew Stanton I don't need to see them beat San Francisco 21-20 after a bye week. I don't need to see them lose to Seattle, 28-6, because Drew Stanton can't do anything to get the offense moving. He's not going to hurt the offense too much, but he can't really do much to get the offense moving. So I would rather, and trust me, you won't find very many people that have a lower opinion of Blaine Gabbert as a quarterback than me. But at this point, you can at least learn something about Gabbert. And then you can go to Stanton if you need to. But I do understand why. I understand the rationale of why they're going to Stanton. It's the safer move. It's the easier move for Arians. It's what he's comfortable with. And when you're the head coach, when your neck is on the line, so to speak, and we'll get to that, but it's not. But, when your neck's on the line, you go with what you're comfortable with. You don't go with the unknown, which is a guy that hasn't even been active on the roster this year.
Exactly. And for me, and this is a take that, it's not from him, but I agree with him. This is why you have Drew Stanton on the roster. If this isn't where you're going to play him, if Carson Palmer gets hurt and you're just going to go to Blaine Gabbert, why in the world is Drew Stanton on the roster anyway? Because say what you want about the QB wins idea, Stanton is 6-3 as a starter. So over the years, he's built up an attaché of trust with Bruce Arians, and not only Bruce Arians, but the guys in the locker room. That would be a very, very bad message to send from the coaches who have been, but mind you, all year have talked about, playoffs, putting themselves in position to playoffs, and they were still talking championship. It wasn't the same thing as 2015, or even 2016. But they were postseason gold. The goals were postseason. Get to the playoffs. They got to go to the playoffs. And if it's not, it's a disappointment. You can't then go from Carson Palmer to then say, okay, we're just going to see what Blaine Gabbert's got. Whatever respect Gabbert's got, you cannot do that because then if you skip your number 2 guy to go with another veteran, because this isn't the same as a rookie quarterback. This isn't the same as a guy you drafted in the second round. You say, well, he's the future anyway. We're gonna see what he's got. You're telling a locker room full of veterans who want to compete and want to try and win to say, oh, we don't care about this year now. And so you can't do that. So as long as, I wrote about it today, Drew Stanton is the right call, and it's really the only call you can make right now because that's why he's on the roster. He's there to back up Carson Palmer. And so you have to start him until one of two things happened. He fails. Like he's a disaster, in which you go, okay, he's not the best guy to put the Cardinals in position to win, or he gets hurt. And history says Stanton's going to be okay. The Cardinals are going to be right around 500. They're going to win and say he's out there for 4 weeks. They're going to go 2-2 over this next 4 weeks, probably alternate winning and losing games, and then he'll get hurt. And then everyone will be happy to be able to watch Blaine Gabbert. But as much as I'm kind of on the Blaine Gabbert hype train, kind of. not full on start Gabbert. He's a future. I just think he's might be the future. And I know that the Cardinals think that they might have something in him. I'm still not at the point. It's like, no, you don't play him until he's ready. You stick to whatever plan you had for Gabbert, which was don't play him this year, see how he does in practice, see how he does in the office, re-sign him in the offseason, and let him compete for a number 2 or a number 1, depending on how the quarterback position goes. So you have to start Drew Stanton. You have to. That's why he's on the team. You're trying to win games. We know Stanton can help him win games. And Blaine Gabbert, we don't know anything about other than what he did in the preseason against third stringers. And he looked good against third stringers. Well, I'll admit that. But he also has looked terrible. As you said with his tape, he has looked perhaps like the worst quarterback to ever start football games and the worst quarterback to ever start 40 football games, mind you. 40 of them in the history of the NFL. And so, yeah, for me, Stanton's a no-brainer. You do it. Gabbert comes in only if things get out of control and Stanton's bad. Or 2, Stanton gets hurt. And you can tell us about what is Drew Stanton's history, because Drew Stanton is not the most durable when it's a starting position.
Yay. Every year when Stanton's been asked to start multiple games, so more than one, he's been injured. And this isn't like calling him out or anything. This is just reality. 2010 started 3 games and got injured. 2014 started 8 games, got injured. It's just, and he was injured in 2008 and 2009, I believe, just different like injuries. Dude spent a lot of time on the injury report for having started 13 career games. So it's, it's just one of those things where you look at it, he's a guy that's prone to getting injured. When you look at it, let's be honest, he's played on some atrocious football teams, those Detroit teams. That Cardinals team in 2014 wasn't atrocious, but they did get 2 quarterbacks injured that year from hits. So it's, again, it's also that he's, been on teams with poor offensive lines. And so when you couple that with the fact that he does tend to get hurt when he plays, it's probably just a matter of time before we get the Blaine Gabbert thing going anyways. So,
which leads me to the final question about the quarterback situation, and that is Colin Kaepernick. The Cardinals have to sign Colin Kaepernick, right? There's zero, zilch, nada reason why they wouldn't do that, according to Justina Anderson from ESPN. Except why?
Well, and
they already have 2 quarterbacks.
Right, and that's what people don't get. Everybody was up in arms about, I won't say everybody, but a lot of media was up in arms today because somebody incorrectly tweeted that the Cardinals signed Mike Bercovici. Well, they did, but they signed Mike Bercovici to the practice squad. They cut Givens Price.
Who's been cut 3 times this year, the practice squad. So
they did not make a move on their active roster. They are, as we talked about to open the show, holding out hope that Carson Palmer is healthy and can play again in 2017. So they are not going to make a move on their active roster until they IR Carson Palmer. So there's no move to be made at quarterback at this point. It's much like Jess and I just discussed with Blaine Gabbert. You can put any name there. Colin Kaepernick, Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, any of these young quarterbacks that have come, Mitch Trubisky, any of these guys, none of them are going to play before Drew Stanton. None of them. You and I can disagree with it all we want, but we're not Bruce Arians, so we're not making that call. That's who Bruce Arians is going to play. He's shown that for 5 years. That's who he's going to play if he has to go to somebody. The only 2 seasons the only season Stanton didn't play was 13, and that was because Carson Palmer took every snap that year. 14, they went directly to Drew Stanton. 15, they went to Stanton in mop-up duty. 16, for 1 game, they went to Drew Stanton. They're going to go to Drew Stanton. That's just the reality of the subject. So even if they sign Colin Kaepernick and cut Blaine Gabbert, he's going to sit behind Drew Stanton. That's just the reality. Nobody's going to play in front of Drew Stanton while Drew Stanton is standing, because that's Bruce Arians' belief and mentality.
And really, why Colin Kaepernick doesn't make sense for the Cardinals. He doesn't know the offense. It's a kind of complex offense to learn, as we've learned over the years. He does. I mean, his weaknesses, the weaknesses in Colin Kaepernick's game, happen to be weaknesses that you can't have in the Cardinals offense. I mean, which is why, think about this. This is why Ryan Lindley was on the roster, because he knew the offense and he did things in practice that impressed them. It's just he was terrible in games. And so that's it. And so this Colin Kaepernick doesn't make sense. I mean, yes, the Cardinals were the team that signed Blaine Gabbert, who was benched in favor of Colin Kaepernick. Instead, Colin Kaepernick. But nationally, that doesn't make sense. Locally, it makes all the sense in the world, because Blaine Gabbert has all the traits of quarterback that Bruce Arians likes. And moving forward, they think might have something. So, yeah, enough quarterback stuff. Well, coming up next on Rise Said Red, we're going to talk about Bruce Arians' retirement and the Rams loss. So that's coming up next on Rise Up, See Red.
Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required. Subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
We're back on Rise Up, See Red. We talked about Carson Palmer. Is he done? The quarterback situation. But Bruce Arians apparently now is in the news. Local ABC 15, sports editor, lead guy, Craig Fouey, got a text from multiple people, sourced around the NFL head coaches, who said, fact, Arians is retiring after this year. To which Arians promptly, heatedly, denies this allegation on social media and in the national media through ESPN and Fitzsimmons. First, why would that report come out? And two, do you believe Arians will or will not retire after the season?
We kind of discussed the Arians thing at the beginning, and unless they just tell him that they're going to kind of bottom out, I don't know why. He's not the type of guy that wants to go out like this, right? Like, he's not going to be the guy that goes out with that 4-12 or 5-11 record. He's
been on the record as saying he does not want to leave the Cardinals in the same situation they were in when Whisenhunt left. He wants to be the guy for his legacy. One, he wants to build his coaching tree, and two, he wants to have a quarterback in place for the Cardinals moving forward before he retires. He already said, this was before the season, he hopes to be coaching next year, because if he's not, it means because he's not healthy. So basically the only reason he would retire is because health prevents him from doing so. It's not a football decision. And anyone, and we were going to say this anyway, anyone who thinks that Bruce Arians is on the hot seat does not understand the situation here. Bruce Arians is not on the hot seat. Bruce Arians led them to 3 very good years. They had a disappointing year, a mediocre year last year. They're having a mediocre year this year. They are not nearly in the same boat as they were with Ken Whisenhunt when They went 5-11, 8-8, and 5-11, and had in at least 2 of those 3 years losing streaks of at least 7 games. This Cardinals team is just losing and winning and losing and winning and just not stringing anything together. There's no hot seat there. And unless they just decide we're blowing this up, Arians is staying. And even then, even if they decide to blow it up, I still think Arians still sticks around at least one more year.
Yeah, and I mean, I could definitely see him walking if they, like I said, if they go total rebuild. But unless they lose out this year and every week is similar to this week where they get blown out, 33-0, I really don't see the management saying you're gone. So it's going to have to come from him. It's going to be his decision whether or not he wants to leave. And like we said, I don't see him wanting to leave in this where they are right now. That's not his personality. So, I don't know where the report came from. I don't know Craig Fouie from Adam, so it doesn't, have anything, I have nothing against the guy, but this is one of those things where, I get passed along really dumb stuff a lot from different people. I don't tweet it. I might text it to Jess every once in a while, but I would never.
I've seen some fun stuff. I will say that.
But I would never put it out there. I would never be like, oh, this is, because we don't even if I can confirm it with a second party, I still don't know. It's still not worth putting out there. And in this case, it's one of those things that it doesn't even, from a logic standpoint, make sense. Why would he inform the team now that he's not coming back next year? And if he was going to do that, why wouldn't they just ask him to resign right now? And then, again, with the Blaine Gabbert theory, just try something else. Give Goody or give Leftwich or give Betcher or, give somebody the reins for the rest of the season, see what they can do, and then go from there. But you don't – this isn't college football where you announce your retirement during the middle of the season and then, hope to get to a good bowl game and say goodbye. Everybody's trying to win the Super Bowl. And so if you're saying this is it, I'm done, and the reason is because maybe this team's, not going to be very good this year, then that doesn't really inspire confidence for your team. So, it doesn't, from a logic standpoint, it didn't make sense. I just, and then the same way, unless they lose the next 12 games or so, 13 games in a row, and you're talking, I mean, if they lost 13 games in a row, I could definitely see him being fired, but I would still think it would have to be a pretty, bad losing streak for him to get canned after what he did the first 3 years here.
Right. And the truth of the matter is this team isn't, I could see them going 7-9 as a bad year, maybe 6-10. But this team's better than that. Maybe the Drew Stanton thing changes things. But, they went 5-3 with Stanton in 2014. So, yeah, it just doesn't – I don't see it happening. It doesn't make any sense why. And the truth of the matter is our local sports TV guys, as I respect the heck out of all of them and really everyone in this industry here, but they don't have a good track record with these reports. Just going all the way back to the coaching search when they were, everything was 90-95% in place for Andy Reid. Yeah.
Even going back before that and going into the Peyton Manning fiasco. The Cardinals as an organization after Jason left, which was the inside information for one local guy. It's not that they're wrong. It's just that they don't really have the inside information. So there's a lot of guesswork involved. And like I said, you may get an information from, a guy in the organization. Maybe the towel boy heard Arians in his office at night talking on the phone saying, maybe this is it, maybe this is all that, this is what all that he has left. And so he passes that along. Like, stuff like that happens, and you guys may laugh and be like, but no, like, the janitor hears something and, they're going to try to put it out there to get some information. And that stuff happens a lot. And so, like I said, unless you can really verify it, it's not dangerous isn't the right word. Cause it's just the NFL, who cares? But it's one of those,
it makes you look silly. It just makes you look silly.
Yeah, and it can be dishonest, and that's unfortunate, So, and I'm not saying Craig's doing that. Like I said, I don't know Craig. Quite frankly, and I don't mean this in a rude way. I don't care about Craig, but that's just the reality. Like, that's what comes up when you put that out there, and you do put yourself in kind of a predicament if you are wrong.
Let's move on to the Rams loss, or the loss to the Rams. 33-0. What happened? What I saw was a team that couldn't do anything. They couldn't do things offensively. They couldn't put anything together offensively. They were terrible defensively. They made mistakes on special teams, and they did not overcome adversity again. Which part of this game do you want to talk about first?
Well, I think if we just start with the reality of this situation of when this game started, you saw that something was amiss. And they had a nice rhythm. They moved down the field. Everything looked good. And then Dawson shanks what should be a chip shot. And you just got that feeling of, oh, crap. Here we go again. And I think for me, and we didn't discuss this, and I meant to, but I think for me, and I know this sounds really rash, I would have cut Dawson after the game. I know they owe him a ton of money, but this guy is a veteran, and you're now at 5 kicks this year that he's missed. And it's not like we're talking a bunch of 50-plus yarders. 5 makeable kicks that he's missed this year. And you can really trace 2 of them into that, oh, crap, here we go again, mentality. And this one was another one. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And then obviously the Palmer injury, you just, like, I don't want to say quit, because I would never question anybody's mental or, their fortitude.
Quitting strong, they gave up hope.
Right. It seemed like, well, this one's over. Like that was the mentality. It wasn't like we quit, like they laid down. It was like, well, maybe next week.
It's like, well, we got the bye coming up, so let's not make things worse. Yeah, and so offensively, after looking like the running game was fixed, they have their worst running output, 25 yards in the game. Adrian Peterson, 11 carries, 21 yards. There were no holes for him. He missed some holes, and what he was able to do against Tampa Bay, first and foremost, happened because they were having success with the running game early. I mean, you look at that first drive. It went 8 yards, 11 yards, 27 yards. Of course you're going to keep running the ball. This game it went 1 yard, no yards. And by the time they got 4 carries, it was the end of it was third down or second down on their second or third drive. they weren't doing. And here's the thing: you saw them moving the ball early, and it wasn't the running game; it's a passing game. They started off with the play action play. They were moving the ball, but then they got bogged down, and then the running game didn't help. Now, that was surprising. I was very disappointed in that fact because you had a running game that was rejuvenated against a running defense. I mean, the Rams have been getting up 140 yards a game on the ground. They've not been stopping anyone in the run, and they made the Cardinals look silly.
Yeah, and that was disheartening. And I went back and looked, and we all know about the Drew Stanton games. We know about the 6-6 tie. This was the first shutout in the Bruce Arians era. And I think that more than anything kind of goes to the concerns with this team as a whole is why is the offense so inconsistent? I don't want to say bad because, we saw Tampa Bay. We saw flashes against, Indy and San Francisco. And yes, I realize I'm talking about terrible teams, but we saw flashes. But why is this offense so inconsistent? In the fifth year of a system, it's not like you're incorporating a bunch of new players because, let's be honest, that's something that we've kind of lamented over the Arians tenure. Why? So it's one of two things. Either the scheme is too hard and the players can't get, the players aren't good enough to figure it out, or the players are just bad. And so I don't want to think that the players are bad, but it's becoming concerning that the players are bad. I mean, and it's not like we're talking about the defense where you're incorporating new players and role players into starting position. Like you're before, if we look before the Palmer injury, outside of running back, all these guys had played games before. I mean, okay, if you want to say Alex Boone, okay, so one of their offensive linemen, but every other offensive lineman has started a number of games for this team. All the wide receivers have been in this system for 3+ years. And they're just inconsistent. And it doesn't make sense that it's this bad.
Yeah, it's always little things here or there. It's Carson Palmer just missing on a throw outside the numbers. Yes, Carson Palmer not making good throws outside the numbers. Whether it's Jermaine Gresham dropping a pass or a missed route or the offensive line. It's always just something little. Something I actually realized that didn't even hit me until what really I think threw the team in their rhythm offensively is the fact that they didn't have Andre Ellington. As odd as that sounds, when they didn't have the running game with Peterson. And so it was interesting because we thought, both of us thought, I'm sure we've thought, I was certain that DJ Foster was going to be active and he was going to take the Ellington role. We thought he was Andre Ellington insurance. Turns out it wasn't the case. He was inactive as well. And so they went once with Kerwin Williams. Most of the time they just went 5 receivers, and Britton Golden essentially became Andre Ellington. But if Andre Ellington's in the game, those empty plays are better. As we've seen this year, he's been productive. When you line up 5 receivers, they know how to handle it. When you line up Andre Ellington in the backfield and then he motions out wide, it changes things. They were missing an element of the offense, on a very underrated part of the offense that was gone. The result was only 193. The Rams rushed for more yards than the Cardinals gained for the entire game.
Hey, by the way,
that's how bad it was.
Did we discuss the fact that, again, Andre Ellington was a focal point of an offense, and again, he's hurt?
He's hurt.
So,
and
but that goes back to the question: is it now we're getting back into the evaluation idea? You can't tell me for 5 seasons there hasn't been a running back with the same skill set as Andre Ellington who actually is healthy. And again, this isn't a shot at Ellington's ability. This is just reality that the dude can't stay healthy when he's counted on. And I get that you were going with David Johnson as your bell cow, and you weren't expecting to have to use Andre Ellington more. And I get that you brought in TJ Logan, and so that was going to be your Ellington replacement until the injury. But like, we're in year 5, and this dude is still on the roster, being expected to contribute, and then having to sit out games because he's hurt. And so why do the same mistakes keep occurring year after year? And we haven't even got to the defense yet. Like, this is just talking about the offense and trying to figure out what the hell is wrong, because it really doesn't make sense, except that it just maybe you and I were wrong, and it's just really not that good anymore.
Maybe. That's the other thing on defense. Well, now on offense, they only converted 3 of 12 third down plays. But you turn it on the other side, defensively, they gave up 425 yards total. They gave up 197 on the ground. Here's the money stat. The Rams were 13 of 19 on third down. They converted 68% of their third down plays. The Cardinals just couldn't get off the field. And there's something just not quite there with the Cardinals. There's something on each of the backs up front. Chandler Jones is the only one getting any pressure on the quarterback. He is having a phenomenal year. He's got 8 sacks. The team has 13. He has 16 quarterback hits. No one else has. I mean, the rest of the team has like 8 or something like. I have to look at the game release again. He is the only pressure. So they're not getting pressure. Marcus Golden wasn't getting home. Hassan Reddick's getting a little better, but they're not getting pressure, consistent pressure anywhere. Then they're not blitzing as much.
Which is really
which tells you something. What are they not like? Are they protecting Tyrann Mathieu? Is that what they're doing? Is they don't trust, and you can tell Pastor Peterson is frustrated as heck when they're playing zone defense, and they give up an 8-yard play in the middle of the field. It drives him crazy because they're playing so much more zone. Tramon Williams didn't play significantly better than Justin Bethel. The only thing that was different is that they didn't give up the big play down the field. Tramon Williams did not play well.
No.
He was active as a tackler.
But we talked about that before the game, though. Like, we talked about that was going to be what happens. You're giving up the big play to lose by a death by 1,000 cuts. Yes. Like those were and no, those weren't the only 2 options, but that's the only 2 options. I mean, that's who he is at this point. Like, it's not a shot at Tramon, but he's old. Like, dude's old. Let's just be honest. So, yeah, Bethel's frustrating because he gives up a big play a game, but it's not like he's giving up.
He's made some plays. He's not been bad. He's had some very good plays. He has lapses. And maybe that's what they were looking for, is to take away the lapse. But then if it's 3rd and 8,
and you're giving 12 yards
every. Get up 12 yards because all they're doing is just picking you apart underneath in the middle of the field. Tyrann Mathieu isn't playing it out. Finally, Dylan Buchanan the last 2 weeks looks good again. He looks active. He looks instinctive. He had his first tackle for a loss. He defended a pass. He picked off a pass. I think Buchanan is beginning to get to that form that he had in 2015. It just I knew it would take about 3 games that he's starting to look that way, but it might be too late. Dansby is just on the field. He's not really making any plays.
I know. It's not funny, but it is.
Tyrann Mathieu is on the field. He broke up his first pass of the year last week, and the initial call was a catch, wasn't it?
It's one of those years, man.
He finally broke up a pass. I mean, Josh Bynes broke up a pass this season before Tyrann Mathieu did. You and I almost broke up a pass before Tyrann Mathieu did. And he's just been there. You know, Tyvon Branch is making tackle after tackle. Antoine Bethea is doing his thing, but Patrick Peterson's doing his thing. There's just enough off up front, in the middle, and in the secondary that has turned them from what was last year statistically a good defense. What it's gone from dominant to okay to really it's who are they stopping? Who are they stopping?
You can say it. They're bad. Their defense is bad.
And it doesn't make sense either. It doesn't make sense why they're bad. That's the thing.
Yeah. So against the pass, they've given up, they're 24th in yards. So again, 1 being good, 32 being bad, 24th in yards, 28th. Oh man. 28th in touchdowns, receptions allowed. That's awful, by the way. That is so bad.
And they're getting elite production from Chandler Jones.
They are, which is phenomenally crazy to think about that defense or offenses literally only have to account for 2 players on every single pass play. They account for Chandler Jones and Patrick Peterson. And both of those guys are playing out of their minds. I mean, Patrick Peterson's on pace to allow 16 catches on the season.
That's absurd.
And
it's absurd.
And Jones is on pace for
17 sacks. It's 18 sacks.
18 sacks.
That's crazy.
So to think when you put it in that scope, their pass defense is abhorred, awful, completely awful. Their run defense, their yards per attempt and yards are not bad. 12th in yards, total yards allowed, 7th in yards per attempt allowed. Teams run the crap out of the ball on them. They've faced the 24th most carries of the season. The Cardinals have attempted 147 carries, and they've defended 202. They trail a lot. They're just not very good right now. But they've allowed, 6 touchdowns on the ground. And the reality is that they don't do a good job of starting in good field positioning, and they don't prevent the other team from starting on good, or they don't do a good job of preventing other teams from getting good starting field position. So they're literally the 4th worst team in the NFL in opponent starting field position. So they have a team that gives up a ton of yards through the air, can't stop anybody through the air, and then the other team has easy field position. And oh, by the way, they face a lot of plays. So so all of this combines into, and they don't force any turnovers. They don't. They're 28th in turnover percentage forced. So they don't, 24th. They don't force any turnovers. They can't stop the pass. And then teams try to run on them late in games with leads, because by that time you're just running down clock. So when you look at it from, kind of the bird's eye view of it, it's just one of those situations where there's not a lot of good at this point on the defense. And yet somehow, some way, they have, if you were going to compile an all-pro team, they have 2 right now in Chandler Jones and Patrick Peterson. That's just how bad everybody else is playing this year.
Do you have any explanation for the amount of zone defense, the zone coverage that they're playing in the middle of the field?
It has to be either they're protecting the linebackers, because as you said, Buchanan's just getting back. Dansby's kind of just there. So they're kind of protecting the linebackers and not putting them in one-on-one situations, or they're protecting their cornerbacks, not named Patrick Peterson. And so I wouldn't say that's Justin Bethel because we've talked about him getting burnt. And I wouldn't say that's Tramon Williams because we just talked about him struggling. So are they trying to protect Tyrann Mathieu? Are they afraid to leave him in man coverage at this point? I mean, it looks like it.
Well, and it's weird because, they're not generating pressure. Why wouldn't they send more? Right.
It's time to start manufacturing pressure at this point.
Right. Which is what they've always done. They've always done that.
But you and I have talked about this quite a bit. And it's something I always go back to with Todd Bowles and something that I felt like Betcher has always struggled with. And that is, for all the good of Betcher, he consistently gets out-coached in the second half of games. And I think we're seeing that now more than ever. Now, this week, the 20-point barrage came in the second quarter, but for the Rams. But I think consistently week to week, he's being out-coached. So why? Like, is he not making adjustments? Does he not understand? And like, when I say stuff like this, I'm not saying like, oh, I could, go out there and call a better defense. Like, that's not what I'm
definitely
saying.
Could do it.
What
I know for most, not at all.
Right. And what my question is, why are they struggling so bad in the second half of games on defense? And that's what I mean by that. Is it Betcher? Is he struggling to make adjustments? Does he not understand what adjustments need to be made? I would honestly venture to say no, he doesn't, because he's not making them consistently, and I think it's showing every week. And so now you're at the point where, you've gone from a team that's great defensively in 2014, borderline great in 2015, good in 2016, to bottom 10 in the NFL this year. I mean, I think that's fair.
It's incredibly frustrating.
And like you said, and now the adjustments made have been after getting burnt by Carson Wentz and being made fun of for a week. It's like, all right, well, we're going to be less aggressive now. Well, it's like, well, like you said, it's not like you're getting any pressure, so why not try to go after him? Why not do more? Because whatever you're doing isn't working right now.
And it's kind of a bad place to. It's like there's no real good place to end the show. But I think the last topics we're going to talk. We can push to next week. Cardinals are on the bye the week, so hey, Bruce Arians is focusing on being 1-0 this week. At least we know the bye week won't beat them unless one of their young players gets caught driving drunk.
Yeah, don't be the guy. Don't be that guy this week, guys. Like,
please.
Let's have nothing to talk about next week, other than lamenting what has been a bad start to the season.
So this is where we'll wrap up this episode of the Rise Up Sea Red podcast. You can find our podcast pretty much anywhere you can. It's all over it's on RevengeOfTheBirds.com. You can find a Blog Talk Radio audio boom. It's on Cards Wire. But most important, if you could subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, you can find us there. Subscribe to the show and have it hit your, hits download for you each and every time. We would love a 5-star rating. Stitcher Radio as well. TuneIn Radio. You can find us everywhere. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. This is the Rise Up Sea Red podcast. We'll talk next week about what's happened this season and kind of look at the outlook for the rest of the year. It's time to rise up Sea Red and go Cardinals.